Mealy, hi. I'm super grateful. So nice to see you here. We never really do anything midweek, so it's special, okay. I am pretty well. I'm slightly tired, but nothing too crazy. I'm kinda just looking for stuff I can watch while I eat. One of them.
How did Nickelback come to be universally hated by everyone? Well, the hatred began with something completely out of Nickelback's control and was rather related to the opinion held by another popular public figure. In 2003, approximately 8 years after Nickelback was created, a comedian by the name of Brian Posehn would appear on a Comedy Central talk show titled Tough Crowd, during which he
I
would
wanna
make
know why they are hated so much. When I learned about them, everyone just told me they suck. But their old music aside, I don't like Nickelback. I just wanna know why they are hated so much.
joke about bad music making people violent before using Nickelback as an example.
Bad music makes people violent. Like Nickelback makes me want to kill Nickelback.
At the time, the other hosts on the show didn't even know who Nickelback was, yet Brian Posehn continued to reassure them with conviction that the band was truly horrible.
I'm so old, I don't even know who Nickelback is.
I'll have to agree with Nick on that.
They're not good. They're horrible.
Let's just
Trust me.
Now, you'd probably assume that this one little comment wasn't enough to make the entire world hate Nickelback, right? Well,
That people just hate. Like, no, people actually hate them. 100%.
the problem was, instead of this comment being a small thing in a relatively obscure episode on Comedy Central, the joke was actually featured in the station's main commercial, which was broadcast to millions for a period of over 6 months. With it, the hatred for Nickelback began to go viral, which was outlined by one user on Reddit who stated, "The joke was on every Tough Crowd promo and nearly all the time. After hearing this joke during every promo for a couple of weeks, I began to hear everyone at my middle school begin to mock Nickelback mercilessly. The worthwhile part of that repetitive commercial was of course the punchline, listening to Nickelback makes me want to kill Nickelback. The whisper down the lane aspect of the joke telling allowed the origin to slowly disappear until even people unfamiliar with modern music knew there was something detestable about Nickelback. Internet meme culture would then facilitate the hatred in the late noughties and early 2010s.
The only thing I want to hear right now is the sweet sound of this Nickelback CD cracking as I drive over it repeatedly.
With articles such as the 14 most brutal Nickelback memes of all time, featuring bangers such as still a better band than Nickelback, parents surprise him with concert tickets, Nickelback, and due to a coal shortage, Santa will be giving all bad little boys and girls Nickelback CDs. In addition to this, a company by the name of Aux Labs would develop a Chrome extension by the name of Nickelblock, never see Nickelback on the internet again, and by 2012 even Adam Sandler was jumping in on the hate train with a tweet reading, "If a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, then have we found the perfect location for a Nickelback concert."
But it became kind of a trend and kind of, you know,
cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, it started to become sort of like a almost a constant, and it hurt.
What Mike Kroger seemed to imply in that clip was that much of the Nickelback hatred was spreading simply because other people hated Nickelback, and those other people who hated Nickelback hated them because someone else hated Nickelback before them. This whole phenomenon was outlined hilariously in a Channel 5 with Andrew Callahan episode.
It's the same reason everybody hates Nickelback.
Channel 5 is just amazing.
Because the internet says so.
Yet this still feels like too simple of an explanation. Why did Brian Posehn choose to rip on Nickelback in the first place? Why didn't he choose a different band? Why was his conviction so strong that he attempted to convince the other hosts on the show of how bad Nickelback was? Well, perhaps it was because he was being forced to listen to them against his will. In 2002, just a year prior to Brian Posehn making his viral comment about Nickelback being terrible, the band's most famous song, How You Remind Me, was crowned as the most played radio song of 2002, and by 2009 it was crowned as the most played radio song of the decade, having been spun on air over 1.2 million times. Just to give you an idea about how crazy that number is, in 2002 there was never a given second on American radio that How You Remind Me wasn't being played on any one station.
In the United States, at the time that the album came out, they say that at any given second
I don't know
in
that.
those days, that
think
song
maybe I
was
know
in
it.
play. There was never a moment in that year when it wasn't playing.
Perhaps rather than hating the band for the music itself, people were sick of Nickelback being shoved down their throats by radio stations throughout the 2000s. While these days we consume music by choosing what we want to listen to on YouTube or Spotify, this luxury didn't exist in 2002, unless you had a specific set.
Hi Mila, you are going to bed really late. But thank you for telling me. Just for the record, I am eating. And I'm still on. Okay. Let me change. Thanks. It is cursed food, but it is. I'm trying to escape from the. No, I just want to learn. But yeah, good night, Mila. Hope you sleep.
CD, you were at the mercy of whatever the radio decided to play, and with every station blasting How You Remind Me all day, every day, it seemed Nickelback was inescapable. While this must have been great in terms of exposing Nickelback to the world, perhaps it went a little too far. How many of you guys have unfollowed an influencer or a friend on Facebook because they post 50 different times per day? Or have you ever had a friend force you to watch a piece of media, whether it be a song, video, or movie, and because you didn't choose to watch it, it feels uncomfortable and you just want it to end? It seemed as though this is how the world felt during Nickelback's blow up, as summarized beautifully in an article written about the band. The song became too big. It never stopped playing. It was everywhere. Its legacy is that it introduced people to Nickelback. In doing so, it became a signpost, a specific moment in time when you met the thing you hate. Now it's hated by association. Now, in order for the song to have been getting that much airtime in the first place, some people must have been enjoying it. Yet Mike Kroger would go on to state that much of the success they achieved as a result of the song
Germany
would
video
eventually
was
turn
nice.
into hatred.
The time at which Nickelback began to suck started shortly after we started to sell millions and millions of albums. And everybody loves an underdog until they're no longer the underdog, and then that's once you're not the underdog anymore, that's when you start to suck.
Mike Kroger's theory that people hated the band simply because they were successful was certainly plausible, as a Finnish academic study on the hatred of Nickelback found that between 2000 and 2014, the more successful Nickelback got, the worse their reviews grew, which was supported by a user on Reddit who wrote, "The only reason that so many people seem to hate Nickelback is because of how popular they are, selling over 50 million albums worldwide." It didn't help that certain media outlets literally had a policy where they weren't allowed to write positive stories about Nickelback. Mike Kroger explained that he met a former journalist for Rolling Stone who had written a positive review of a Nickelback album while working for the media company, yet Rolling Stone never allowed the journalist to post it simply because it was positive.
And this journalist said, hey, I gotta tell you a story. He was asked to review one of our albums, and he wrote a very, very detailed and well thought out review of the album, and it was positive. He took it to his editor, and his editor just said, I'm not gonna print this, because we here at Rolling Stone are very anti-Nickelback. We do not like Nickelback. We can't write good things about Nickelback.
And if this was the narrative being held by the media, it's hardly surprising to discover that there have been countless other negative articles on the band, although to be fair, some of them have certainly been a result of Nickelback's poor decisions. For example, in 2006, the Nickelback frontman was stopped by police for speeding in his luxury Lamborghini sports car. A breath test found he had nearly twice the legal limit of alcohol in his system. Along similar lines, in an interview with Playboy, Chad Kroeger bragged about once having drunk 13 Corona beers in a row, stating that he can down a Corona in 5 or 6 seconds, although while their drinking habits
Chad
along with
started
their love
Corona.
for car chases, explosions and big boobs probably just made their audience love them even more, one thing that they would do in 2008 might actually qualify as the first thing done by Nickelback themselves to have a genuine impact on their reputation. In fact, this thing was so detrimental that the Finnish academic study we mentioned earlier anchored it as the main reason behind the band's poor reputation, and it began when they wrote a song by the name of Rockstar in 2005. 3 years after releasing the song, it was licensed to DFS Furniture for an advertisement, which was so terrible that it put a dent in the band's reputation. Nickelback's branding was, as mentioned previously, about metal, beers, and the same things Middle America likes. Therefore, licensing their music to a commercial that looked like this felt a little bit inauthentic. Now, we can probably all agree that it feels like a bit of a stretch to claim that Nickelback's worldwide hatred came about as a result of one relatively obscure furniture advertisement. However, according to the Finnish study, the issue, Antonin writes, is about the perception of authenticity. Rock critics like to think of themselves as protectors of originality, and they perceived Nickelback to be a bunch of sellouts, true to their money rather than the art. Perhaps it was less about them being in the background of a furniture ad, and more about them selling their music to the furniture ad in the first place. People perceived them as sellouts with zero standards. In addition to this, the Finnish study made the claim that fans were unhappy with Nickelback's perceived lack of originality. When you listen to Nickelback, you think a generic rock song not pushing the envelope. Nickelback is too much of everything to be enough of something. They follow genre expectations too well, which is seen as empty imitation, but also not well enough, which is read as commercial tactics and as a lack of a stable and sincere identity. The idea that Nickelback were hated for being a generic risk-free rock band has been theorized everywhere on the internet. In a Reddit thread attempting to discover how the band became so hated, one user wrote, "People hate Nickelback because they represent the idea that a record label can take any band, no matter how bad, and make them popular. The label can use clever PR and good advertising to make loads of money off a band that is just mediocre. People don't hate the band nearly as much as they hate the idea that the band represents," which was followed by a reply reading, "They're a mediocre band that has experienced precisely zero musical growth and exists purely as a vehicle to print money for record labels. They knew they were a mediocre band, didn't care about musical growth, signed on knowing what the plan was, and had no problem with any of it. It doesn't even make sense to hate Nickelback for their music. It's not distinctive enough to be worthy of notice. It's carefully designed to be pointless and catchy. It's a product built to appeal to the lowest common denominator. It doesn't do anything wrong because it doesn't dare to take any risks." To put it simply, instead of Nickelback creating music that's risky and authentic to them, the band is perceived as having a reputation for putting out whatever music is guaranteed to appeal to the masses, yet it's hard to tell if this perception is even correct. In an interview with Face Culture, Chad Kroeger discusses how they've experimented with a bunch of different types of music.
We definitely started off as a little bit of a heavier band, but we found fans in so many different places because we just wanted to write different kinds of songs. So we'd write a song that was way over here and the fans would accept it, and then sometimes we'd write something really heavy and the fans would accept that too.
Before explaining that each band member perceives the music in their own unique way.
Everyone had their own different interpretation of it. One was political, one was religious, one was like corporate.
Which doesn't exactly sound like they were specifically trying to follow some kind of radio success formula. Maybe this point is just another reason the internet made up to justify hating them, because outside of the internet they claim that they're hated by no one. For example, a petition requesting that Nickelback not play at halftime during an NFL game racked up over 55,000 signatures, yet after arriving in the city to play the concert, the band stated that it was nothing but
Rough.
petition by kind of
one. Everyone had their own
Wait,
too.
what? Rough.
maybe this
Oh,
point is they're hated
that's the song.
by no racked up over 55,000 signatures, yet after arriving in the city to play the concert, the band stated that it was nothing but love from the fans.
Playing the halftime, what was that like?
It was very controversial filled, and far less so when we actually got there. Every single human being that we came in contact with in Detroit was like, "We love you. We have no idea what this is all about."
Now, there was that one time in Portugal where they walked off stage after having rocks and bottles thrown at them, yet as an overall, the band has been wise in framing the hatred as a long-term positive.
I've been really clear with my guys that all all that hate has given our career legs. And that's the thing that scares me the most is if people finally stop hating us.
I don't know, I like their... I don't know what album it was. Dark Horse was okay. I think. And one after Dark Horse. And apparently their newest album is also nice, but I haven't. I just love
They're
Sunny
the most
V2 video.
iconic musical duo of the early 2010s. The wild hair, the lensless glasses, and the bizarre outfits, mixed with a bright
Stretch. And a hydrate. Hydrate. Getting ready for bed. Happy that you were here. Good night, sleep. Well, good night, good night. Making food really quick.
overly saturated color scheme helped to generate a combined 4 billion views across their 4 most popular music videos, in the process making LMFAO an almost unforgettable act. The whole time, however,
Thanks. Have a nice night.
the two members of the group hated each other. Redfoo and Sky Blue feuded publicly.
What's LMFAO?
On Facebook, became involved in lawsuits, were berated and destroyed by the media, all while each of their careers died a silent, slow death in the background, with failed project after failed project following their peak in 2011. The story of LMFAO is a brutal warning about the risks of going into business with a family member, because as you may or may not know, the group began as an uncle-nephew duo. Redfoo, being the uncle and older of the two by approximately 11 years, had been born into the music world, with his father being the incredibly rich and famous Berry Gordy, who founded Motown Records, which signed artists such as Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson, with Sky Blue being the 11-year younger nephew of Redfoo, and therefore also being in the same family.
You're actually part of a very famous family.
Yes.
And that is?
The Gordys.
The Gordys.
It's safe to say that the two were in an advantageous position from the very beginning. However, this certainly didn't guarantee success for either of the two family members. In 1997, at the age of 22, Redfoo released his first studio album titled Balance Beam, which, according to the Discogs website, sold only 44 copies. In an interview from 2002, over 5 years after the release of his first album, it appeared as though Redfoo was still somewhat confused about the direction in which his life was going.
And I'm doing some stand-up comedy. I'm doing some music, I'm doing some rapping, but for the first time in my life, I'm trying to just build myself.
Yet at around the same point in time, Redfoo and his nephew Sky Blue seem to have subscribed to the popular self-help movement known as The Secret, believing that if they simply envision themselves as big DJs, the path to such a position would reveal itself as time progressed.
And it started off really with The Secret.
The Secret, the motivational,
thing,
video.
We really saw that putting out there what we want is going to come back.
With the goal of becoming big DJs now established, their they'd impulsively decided to form LMFAO whilst at a family Christmas party.
One day we were at this Christmas party at the family crib at my grandfather's house. He's like, yo, we should form a group together.
Also mentioning that they originally planned on calling themselves Sexy Dudes, yet decided to go with LMFAO, fearing that Sexy Dudes might result in judgment from their grandmother. Subsequently, Redfoo and Sky Blue began to live what they described to be the party rock lifestyle, DJing 3 nights per week at random clubs across Los Angeles, whilst working on improving their music during the daytime.
We were just living this lifestyle, which was, you know, party rock. You know what I'm saying? Like, we went and did clubs 3 times a week, and people didn't know who we were, didn't know our music, and we just get up there, yo, what up, we LMFAO. We were partying every night, we're performing, and every night, and if not, we're creating something, we're making something. To me, that whole time just felt like a one long party.
This is where LMFAO's family connections came into play. Redfoo and will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas had conveniently been friends since high school, and by 2009, Redfoo and his cousin had been creating music for over 10 years, giving LMFAO enough skill and experience to land a major record deal through will.i.am. Subsequently, he and Sky Blue would release bangers such as Yes and I'm in Miami, at which point they'd fully embody the idea that success happens not at all, then all at once. Yes went certified gold in the United States, boasting over 500,000 sales, whilst I'm in Miami peaked top 50 in the charts throughout the United States, the UK, Canada, and Australia. The extreme popularity of these 2 songs caught the attention of David Guetta, who would feature them on his song Getting Over You alongside Fergie, which has over 250 million views to this day. Yet, the music seemed like only half of what made LMFAO so iconic. A large portion of their skill seemed to lie in their memorable style and branding. You could tell that the members of LMFAO were just these 2 Los Angeles bozos.
What's your favorite thing about Los Angeles? The women.
Who had a genuine passion for partying and making others dance. Everything about them was just so authentic. Their wacky style and carefree attitude felt effortless and unapologetic. Every other DJ seemed to be trying so hard to look cool or suave, yet LMFAO was so comfortable in making a fool of themselves for the entertainment of others, as if they were mixing comedy into their music. However, this approach certainly wasn't appreciated by everyone. In June 2011, LMFAO released their most infamous album titled Sorry for Party Rocking, which would receive a 0 out of 10 review from NME, which included a statement reading, LMFAO understood the pain they were inflicting on the world and did it anyway. That's a horrifying thought. Even Lucifer had good intentions. The Guardian would give it Sorry for Party Rocking a slightly better review at 1 out of 5 stars. However, if anything, these reviews were simply proof that taste is subjective, as the songs within this album would go on to become some of the most popular in pop music history. As mentioned in the beginning, the 4 most viewed songs on the album, Party Rock Anthem, Champagne Showers, Sorry for Party Rocking, and Sexy and I Know It, boast a combined total of 4 billion views here on YouTube, while on the Billboard Greatest of All Time Hot 100 Songs, Party Rock Anthem still sits at rank number 7 over 10 years later. However, while on the surface it seemed as though everything was going incredibly well for LMFAO, nobody could tell that behind the scenes, the relationship between the 2 members was beginning to deteriorate. The beef between Redfoo and Sky Blue began in early 2012, after Sky Blue would injure his back during a live Super Bowl performance alongside Madonna.
During the Super Bowl, my disc slipped when I was performing. And so as soon as I went down that little elevator, I collapsed and I couldn't even watch the rest of the show or anything.
This injury meant that Sky Blue couldn't continue on with the tour, or possibly even make music at all, meaning Redfoo had to perform the tour by himself while Sky Blue recovered from his injury.
Was food there for you during that time period, during your healing process?
No, he's doing his thing, you know what I mean? He was really focused on what he needed to do. The tour kept going, and then I just had to go home, and and everybody kept doing the party rock and kept doing the LMFAO without me.
As a result, Sky Blue wasn't paid for the tour.
Did you still get paid though?
Hey, look, I don't.
What kind of story is that? Oh my gosh, yo.
I wish.
So you got kicked out the group because your back went out.
I mean, yeah.
Which must have soured their relationship pretty heavily, as after the tour concluded, Sky Blue and Redfoo wouldn't speak to each other for over a year.
After my back went out, I didn't speak to Foo for a year. Me and Foo didn't talk for a year.
And you didn't talk on the Happy Merry Christmas,
Did he text you?
Nothing.
It became even worse when news outlets began to catch wind of the conflict. One article written by E! News in April 2012, approximately 2 months after the back injury, read, "The New York Post reported yesterday that the Grammy-nominated rappers are fighting, apparently over the cash they've made from their catchy tunes, including the #1 hits Party Rock Anthem and Sexy and I Know It, and are on the verge of going their separate ways." The 2 LMFAO members would shut these rumors down in an article written by Rolling Stone titled LMFAO LMFAO breakup rumors completely false, which stated, in a conference call with reporters on Wednesday, the duo dismissed the speculation as merely a byproduct of their rising fame. It's completely false. We're family at the end of the day. Blood is stronger than anything, said Sky Blue, alluding to the fact that he is Redfoo's nephew. Sky might be doing a DJ set in
That's not
South
stronger
America
than
and I might be
anything.
in Vegas, and they'll say, oh, they're doing separate things. How can we make a story out of that? Said Redfoo. We have to be smart enough to recognize it's all a game, keep executing our vision, and turn this world into a party planet. While this response from Redfoo and Sky Blue sounded quite authentic, only 5 months later the two would make a different statement confirming that LMFAO was officially coming to an end. Discussing the relationship of the duo, Redfoo would state, I think we naturally just started hanging with two different sets of people, two different crowds, but we're always family. He'll always be my nephew, I'll always be his uncle. I feel like we've been doing this for so long, 5 or 6 years, and we're kind of like saying, well, let's just do what's natural and just kind of explore that instead of like forcing it all the time. In video interviews, Redfoo would reinforce that he and Sky Blue had simply grown apart.
Two people just grow. You grow and we kind of grew into our own individuals, and we just wanted to do so many things.
Yet shortly thereafter, Sky Blue would write a Facebook status directed at Redfoo, implying that their split wasn't so amicable. I've been wanting to speak my truth about this whole LMFAO situation for a long time. Out of respect to my family, I kept it all to myself. The way you belittle people and your crazy power trips were some of the main reasons our relationship as family and partnership has greatly suffered. My back went out right before a big arena show. You went out and performed, but then just left on the tour bus without seeing me. In fact, you didn't speak to me after that for about a year, which is around the time you announced our hiatus. As someone who really cared, loved, and had your back, this really hurt. I mean, you're my uncle, my blood. You even kept touring as LMFAO and made a lot of money doing it. You never once called me to ask me how I was recovering, you just kept shuffling every day without me. I really loved you, I looked up to you, man, but the more successful we got, the more you wanted control. Possibly spotting a weakness in the duo, LMFAO would then be presented with a $7 million lawsuit by their former management, as well as another lawsuit by Rick Ross, who claimed that their line "Every Day I'm Shuffling" had been copied from his 2006 song titled "Every Day I'm Hustling." Interestingly, throughout the lawsuit, Rick Ross would get further insight into the reason behind LMFAO's split. Further, Ross says Sky trashed his uncle in a deposition, where he said the real reason LMFAO broke up was Redfoo's refusal to keep him in the loop. With LMFAO breaking up and being sued, Redfoo and Sky Blue's only logical path was to continue as solo artists, only this didn't exactly go as planned.
After having such a success in LMFAO, and then going to a club, and then there's like 20 people there because Sky Blue's coming, not LMFAO.
As mentioned, Sky Blue went from selling out arenas as LMFAO to having 20 people show up to his shows as a solo artist. He released 2 singles in the year after LMFAO's breakup, each of which performing reasonably with around 2 million views each on YouTube, yet this was basically all of the success that Sky Blue was able to achieve as a solo artist. His career would fizzle out in the 3 years that followed, with his final piece of music being released in late 2016 before he'd disappear from the music industry. And while this marked the cold, bitter end of Sky Blue's career, Redfoo, being the more famous of the two, had substantially more success as a solo artist, but only in the beginning. He'd initially land a position as a judge on X Factor Australia, in the process dropping songs such as A New Thing and Let's Get Ridiculous, each of which going platinum in sales, whilst both cracking the 100 million view mark here on YouTube. However, alongside these 2 incredibly popular tracks, Redfoo would also feature on a song titled Literally I Can't, which would unravel much of the success that he had built as a solo artist. The song, which according to one article follows a group of sorority girls who are pressured into drinking and dancing, was labelled as misogynistic by countless different news outlets, prompting a response from Redfoo, who would state, "Another example of critics victimizing an artist by purposely misinterpreting his/her work to support a pre-existing agenda, #literally I can't, which will create a rift between him and his audience, with Twitter responses such as, dude, you've got a video of bros victimizing a group of women because they don't feel safe drinking with them. No, this isn't victimizing. You're a blatant example of extreme misogynistic behavior. Whatever made you think those lyrics were okay? He's sexist and he knows it." Others would go so far as to create a petition stating that Redfoo shouldn't be rehired on the next season of X Factor, which went on to receive over 23,000 signatures. Incredibly, the petition's request became a reality only a few months later, when Redfoo was ultimately fired from the show. He'd get another shot on television after being invited to compete on Dancing with the Stars, only to be eliminated in the very first round. Yet being booted from X Factor and being eliminated on Dancing with the Stars was nothing compared to the reality check that Redfoo would receive after he'd released a brand new album in 2016 titled Party Rock Mansion. The album was dubbed a commercial failure after it would sell a miserable 144 copies in Australia for a number 172 debut, which was especially terrible as Redfoo had counted Australia as one of his most successful territories. The lackluster performance of the album seemed to indicate to Redfoo that his music career was coming to an end, as as he'd only create a handful of songs in the 2 years following the poor release of Party Rock Mansion, creating his final song in February 2018 before also disappearing from the music industry. In countless interviews from before the pair disappeared, both Redfoo and Sky Blue seemed pretty confident that at some point they'd get back together for an LMFAO reunion.
Will Sky Blue and Redfoo ever get together and make another LMFAO project? Is that even possible based on where you at now?
I believe so.
Yet, for obvious reasons as outlined, it doesn't seem like this will be happening anytime soon.
Damn. Bring my plates and stuff back, and then I can something else. I'll be right back. And